Is there any like insight or caveat that you wouldn't know unless you would have completed Oplog?
Yeah, I get where you're going with this. I think the most important thing here, something that's really cool here is that the introductory statistics course in Solder Com 291 actually doubles as the prerequisite for a lot of more advanced stats courses, so that's very nice.
So I'll pass it on to my guest for today and colleague from work at UBC Pass, Stoyan Hristov. Stoyan, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, thank you for that introduction, Hima. My name is Stoyan. I am a fourth year student at UBC. My major is operations and logistics, and I'm doing a minor in math. Like Hima said, we know each other, we've had classes together, we also work together as past leaders at the Counterport Learning Commons. Last thing about me is just a fun fact. I am a musician outside of school, so I have a project called Universe Hopper, which is like a fusion of jazz and trap beats, so that's a ton of fun.
Yeah, super cool fact and super cool to have. Definitely check out Stone's music if you're also checking out his experiences with Oplog and everything else as well. And on that note, Stone, so you've been in Oplog for about what I'd say like 3 or 4 years now. Um, I just want you to maybe try and define that specialization for those who are listening.
Yeah, so Oplog Operations and Logistics has two components, the operations and the logistics. On the operations side, it's about what's going on inside the workplace. How can we really make things flow really smoothly about like producing a product or delivering a service? Whereas the logistics side is really about delivery. So once this product has been created, once the service has been, thought out, how can we make sure that it gets to the right people at the right place at the right time at the right price, all of that?
Just maybe take us through what your experience has been in that specialization.
Yeah, absolutely. So Oplog has four required classes. Two of them are ones that everyone takes, and then the second two are just out of a pool of off-block classes. You can kind of choose them. So I'll start off with the two that everyone takes. We have service operations and supply chain management, which are both taught by the same professor, Greg Worker, who also teaches the introductory quantitative decision-making class, Com 290. But what those two classes are about, service operations is about like um, how can we deliver a service in a correct way, in a good way, in a way that's efficient. So one of the example problems that I had was thinking about healthcare, like a hospital. If you are building a hospital from scratch, how should you design each of the rooms such that there is the least amount of walking time, so that patients don't really have to spend a lot of time waiting on the stretcher as you carry them from one operation table to another. So things like that, really cool there. And then there's the supply chain management side, which is really cool, especially if you're interested into like global stuff. So that's about like maybe we source a lot of our materials from I don't know, Japan, for example, that had a tsunami several years ago. So that risk of a natural disaster is a risk that we should take into account when we're talking about the rigor of our supply chain. What are some things that businesses can do to mitigate that risk, to make sure that the products they need delivered are getting delivered in a way that suits them and their needs? And then we have the two classes that are kind of selected from a pool. The ones that I chose were data visualization and business analytics, which is a lot of programming in SQL, which is a database management software, a lot of data visualization in Tableau, and a lot of programming in R, which is kind of analogous to Python. It's used quite a lot in industry and academia. And then the fourth course is called Quantitative Policy Analysis. I don't think that one is offered anymore, but it was a super interesting course regardless. It's about basically policies that the government can put in place and how we can determine if they're good policies, how they might affect the economy, things like that.
But talk us through a little bit now on what do you end up doing once you graduate from Oplog, or when you're in Oplog, what kind of co-op roles do you do?
Oh, that's a great question. Oplog is quite a flexible specialization. So, what do I want to say? Let's start off with co-op. A lot of the co-op roles that you're prepared for, you can do oploggy roles such as like supply chain analyst, where you literally like look at their supply chain and you analyze it. You can do continuous improvement, which is very implicitly, but it's still taught at Sauder in a sense. So that can help. That's actually one of the things that I've done. You can also do less oploggy roles, such as data analytics. Just because oplog gives you those quantitative skills, so you can apply them in a slightly different scenario, but in a similar flavor. Post graduation, I would say it's pretty similar. You're just going to do like the more advanced flavor of those roles. You're still going to be able to analyze supply chains or logistics. You're still going to be able to crunch a lot of numbers, do data, and things like that. What I would say though is the flexibility of Uplog also comes with the fact that there are only four required business courses, which means you technically have one extra elective than people in other options would.
I see.
Not considering books, of course, because I know you have like zero electives.
Yeah, yeah. Don't even get me started on that, man.
But the fun part that comes with that is you get to really diversify your degree and pick which kind of stream you want to go into. So I know a lot of people who are doing like really qualitative courses. So let's say something like, I don't know, Asian studies, for example, and then they can go ahead and work abroad in Asia because now they have, better knowledge about that. Other people are going more quantitative routes because they want to supplement the practical aspects of OPLA with some more theoretical stuff like math courses or statistics courses. Regardless of what electives people choose, there are people who might do like a mix of both or something along those lines. The choice of electives can greatly help kind of steer your journey after you graduate and also while you're looking at co-op roles.
Is there any like insight or caveat that you wouldn't know unless you would have completed Upload?
Yeah, I get where you're going with this. I think the most important thing here, something that's really cool here is that the introductory statistics course in Solder, Com 291, actually doubles as the prerequisite for a lot of more advanced stats courses, so that's very nice. A couple of routes you can do, of course, talk about this with the academic advisor because they're going to know best. I was just sharing my own experience. If you take a stats course that allows Com 291, you can then take the stats course that doesn't allow Com 291, but maybe email one of the stats faculty or advisors and say, hey, look, I've taken some amount of statistical background. I know you want Stat 200, but I have this harder stat course that should work. So can you let me in? And you kind of apply for a prerequisite wave that's worked with me and math courses. The other thing you can do if you don't necessarily want to go that riskier route is talk to the solder advisors and see if they'll let you take Stat 200 instead of Com 291. Usually they should be fine with it because there are a lot of students who transfer into solder who don't need to take 291 because their credit for Stat 200 transfers over. So there are ways to be flexible about that, but definitely be mindful about this early into your degree.
Yeah, good call out. And I would recommend that. A thing that took me a long while to realize is that all these rules that are put in place, whether it's for co-op or whether it's for academics, they're meant to be super rigid and strict so that they don't have to deal with every student on a case by case basis. And it makes sense. There's like thousands of students at UBC and tens of thousands of students at UBC and thousands at Sauder alone. So if you have something that you think is a roadblock for you to get something done or participate in something, definitely go to the UGO and be clear about what you want and have an honest conversation. They're not going to scold you. They're not going to kick you out or anything. So just go to them and say, look, I want to do this, but this is not working out for me. I've tried my best. Here are my options. Can you help me with it? And they'll definitely help you. They're friendly. And at the end of the day, they want you to get the best experience that you can. So again, bring this up with the UGO. If you have any questions, just book a 30-minute session, drop in. Right now it's virtual. Go drop in and just sit and ask all your questions. So great call out there, Stoyan. And coming back to, so we've talked about courses, we've talked about what roles you could do, whether you get into co-op and things like that. Tell us a little bit about what companies are out there that are interested in hiring OPLOG graduates or OPLOG co-op students.
There are tons of companies, private and public. Public sector is actually really cool, especially if you work for like Air Canada or something. You can do like revenue management for the airlines. Like, how much should you overbook? How should you
Free
price
air
tickets?
tickets, dude. The first thing I thought of was free air tickets. Hell yeah.
So that's really cool. On the private side, there are massive organizations that'll take you. There are also startups that'll take you, whatever your vibe is. Personally, like, what companies would I work for post grad? That's still up in the air. But when I'm applying for co-op roles, I tend to look for companies that have like 1 billion plus net operating income, just for the sake of like having a recognizable name on your resume for after you graduate. But yeah, in general, a lot of companies out there are hiring OPLOG students, and the cool thing about OPLOG is how interdisciplinary it is. Like, I can go to the airport and be useful. I can go to the hospital and be useful. I can go to like Aritzia and be useful. It's really any industry that I want that'll need the skills that OPLOG gives us.
No, that's awesome. And that's a great asset to have, especially if you're an undergrad student, because you don't want to just early in your career be tied down too much by what you're studying and or what what your degree says, right? Maybe you're really good at Uplog, maybe you're good at analytics more specifically, and you just enjoy doing that in different fields, and it can be really interesting. And on that note, so we've talked about courses that you should take as an Uplog student, different tracks you can take, companies that you can do co-ops with, and also different lines of work that you could take. Coming back to just, I guess, because we're edging close to the end of this podcast. Oh, something's up with me today. Edging close to the end of this podcast. So, and do you have any thoughts on, like, any concluding thoughts on Uplog for students who are in the major deciding that they want to take this major?
Do I have any final thoughts? Understand the reason behind the quantitative parts of OPLOG as much as you can. Um, operational logistics, being a solder degree, naturally has a lot of a qualitative side. So it's a lot about like, here's how to do a technical skill. Now here's why it's important. And it's great to know why it's important. It's great to be able to communicate that, especially to employers who don't know why it's important. But it's equally important to understand why the quantitative skill that you're taught works.
100%. Completely agree with that. And on that note, thank you so much, Stoyan, for taking the time to be here today. And thank you so much to the rest of you for tuning into this episode of the UBC podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Hima. I hope this was helpful, everyone.